What if the person you call I is nothing more than a highly sophisticated prison warden, and the cell you inhabit is built entirely out of the expectations of people who do not actually exist? We move through the world under the intoxicating delusion that we are participating in a shared reality. We believe that by caring, by reacting, by attaching our very marrow to the outcomes of the world, we are somehow becoming more real. This is the first lie. It is not because you lack discipline that you feel drained, nor is it because the world is inherently cruel or demanding. The real reason you are disintegrating is currently sitting in the room with you, watching you through your own eyes. Yet you cannot see it, because it is the very lens you use to perceive. It is the participant. The part of your psyche that believes it must belong to the storm to survive it. By the end of this journey, you will not find peace. You will find something far more terrifying. The realization that your greatest crisis is not the loss of your world, but your refusal to let it die. The collective unconscious is a heavy sea, and most men drown because they try to swim against the current of their own shadows. We mistake our entanglements for engagement. We mistake our exhaustion for importance. But look closer at the fatigue in your bones. It is not the work that tires you. It is the maintenance of the illusion. You are holding up a mask that has begun to fuse with your skin, and the effort of keeping that mask from cracking is consuming the very energy required for your soul to breathe. We must begin the descent into the cold, clinical reality of detachment, not as a lifestyle choice, but as a biological necessity for the spirit. The persona was originally intended to be a functional interface, a skin to protect the delicate inner workings of the psyche from the abrasive friction of society. However, for the modern individual, the skin has become a parasite. It has developed its own nervous system, its own hunger, and its own terror of being discarded. When you say you are invested in a project, a relationship, or a reputation, you are actually describing a process of psychic hemorrhaging. You are feeding the persona your vital force so that it may continue to perform for an audience that is also, paradoxically, composed of masks. We live in a hall of mirrors where no one is actually present. The energy you seek to master is currently being siphoned off by 1,000 invisible threads, each one tied to a should, a must, or a what will they think. This is the architecture of the mirage. You believe that by detaching, you will become empty. The truth is that you are already empty. You are simply full of other people's ghosts. The parasitic persona demands that you remain attached to the world because, without the world's gaze, the persona ceases to exist. And to the ego, non-existence is the ultimate horror. Thus, you are kept in a state of perpetual agitation, a low-grade fever of the soul, ensuring you never look inward long enough to see the hollow space where a king should sit. Every emotional reaction to an external event is a leak in your vessel. When you react with anger, fear, or even desperate hope to the whims of the collective, you are suffering from psychic bleeding. The other, whether it be a partner, a boss, or the faceless mob of the digital age, exerts a gravitational pull on your internal state. We call this empathy or passion. But in the clinical dark of the analytical room, we know it by its true name: slavery. Total detachment is the recognition that the gravity of the other is an artificial force, You have been trained since birth to respond to the tug of the leash. You have been told that to be detached is to be cold, to be sociopathic. But consider the alternative. A life spent as a reactive organism, a biological machine that twitches whenever the world presses a button. The mechanics of this bleeding are subtle. It begins with a thought, a concern for an outcome you cannot control, and ends with the total depletion of your creative fire. To master your energy, you must first acknowledge that your energy is currently public property. You are a common well from which any passerby can drink. The path to sovereignty begins with the closing of the gates, an act of such profound selfishness that it feels like a crime. The most difficult tethers to cut are those we have mistaken for love. In the Jungian sense, much of what we call connection is actually participation mystique, a primitive psychological state where the boundaries between the self and the object are blurred. You do not love the other. You are merely addicted to the way they stabilize your own fragile sense of reality. This is the invisible umbilicus. It provides a constant stream of psychic nourishment, but it also ensures you never develop a digestive system of your own. When you feel the need to explain yourself, to be understood, or to change someone's mind, you are feeling the tug of the cord. It is a manifestation of a deep-seated fear. The fear that, if you are not reflected in the eyes of another, you might actually vanish. Detachment is the surgical severance of this cord. It is the terrifying realization that you are fundamentally alone, and that any attempt to bridge that gap through emotional dependency is a form of spiritual regression. We cling because we are afraid to fall into ourselves. We stay attached to toxic dynamics, to failing institutions, and to dead ideas, because the friction of the struggle provides a false sense of warmth. But warmth is not life. A corpse can be kept warm by a fire, but it remains a corpse. The energy you are losing to these relational webs is the energy required for your individuation. Every time you check in on how you are being perceived, you are abandoning the inner work for the sake of a comfortable cage. To grasp why the search for truth can dismantle your identity before it rebuilds it, continue with The Mental Collapse You Can't Avoid If You Seek Truth, Carl Jung. The ego is a glutton for recognition. It seeks the altar of validation with the desperation of a starving animal. We have built a civilization that functions as a giant feedback loop, designed to keep the ego in a state of constant, shallow arousal. Every like, every nod of agreement, every "well done" is a crumb that keeps the ego from looking at the feast it is missing within. But the price of this validation is high. You must remain predictable. You must remain attached. To be detached is to become unpredictable to the world. It is to stop bringing offerings to the altar. When you no longer care if you are seen as good, successful, or enlightened, the ego begins to starve. This is the point of maximum danger. A starving ego will scream. It will conjure up crises. It will manifest physical illness. It will whisper that you are becoming a monster. It will do anything to force you back into the cycle of attachment. But if you can sit in the silence of that hunger, without reaching for the world, something miraculous happens. The energy that was previously used to hunt for validation begins to sink back into the deeper layers of the psyche. It begins to illuminate the shadow. It begins to fuel the process of self-creation rather than self-presentation. We are often more attached to our suffering than to our joy. Suffering provides a narrative. It gives the ego a heroic struggle to engage in. We stay attached to our grievances, our traumas, and our enemies because they define the boundaries of who we are. I am the one who is wronged is a much easier identity to maintain than I am a void waiting to be filled by the self. This is the feedback loop of suffering. You encounter a problem, you attach your identity to it, you pour your energy into solving it, and in doing so, you ensure the problem remains central to your existence. The beast of the external world thrives on your attention. Whether that attention is positive or negative matters little to the beast. It only cares that you are plugged in. Total detachment requires the courage to let the problem exist without you. It is the recognition that many of the fires in your life are only burning because you are providing the oxygen of your focus. When you withdraw your energy, the fire doesn't necessarily go out, but it no longer burns you. This is the clinical coldness of the Jungian observer, seeing the tragedy, seeing the chaos, and refusing to be the fuel. It is the transition from being a character in the play to being the theater in which the play occurs. The more we attach ourselves to a light persona, the successful professional, the kind parent, the loyal friend, the more the shadow grows in the darkness. We think that by being attached to high ideals, we are becoming better people. In reality, we are simply building a pressure vessel. The energy we refuse to acknowledge, the primitive, the chaotic, the unacceptable parts of our nature are being compressed. Detachment is not just about letting go of the world. It is about letting go of your control over yourself. Most people live in a state of constant internal vigilance, terrified that their shadow might slip out and ruin their carefully constructed life. This vigilance is an exhausting drain on your energy reserves. It is a civil war that has no end. When you practice total detachment, you even detach from your own moral self-image. You allow the pressure vessel to leak. You stop trying to be good and start trying to be whole. The rebellion of the shadow occurs when the ego's attachment to the persona becomes so rigid that the soul begins to suffocate. The ensuing crisis, the breakdown, the affair, the sudden abandonment of a career is not a disaster. It is a desperate act of self-preservation by the psyche. It is the shadow smashing the windows because the ego refused to open the door. Have you ever wondered why you sabotage your own success just as it is within reach? From a Jungian perspective, the saboteur is often the only part of you that is truly honest. It sees the path you are on, a path of increasing attachment, increasing responsibility to the collective, and decreasing freedom. And it pulls the emergency brake. It causes you to forget the meeting, to say the wrong thing, to lose the key. We fail on purpose because at a subconscious level, we know that success in the eyes of the world is a trap. It is a golden tether, but a tether nonetheless. The saboteur is trying to force a state of detachment upon you. It is trying to burn down the structures that are keeping you imprisoned. If you do not learn to detach consciously, the unconscious will do it for you, and it will not be gentle. It will use the sledgehammer of bad luck to shatter your attachments. Mastering your energy means aligning yourself with this internal force before it has to resort to violence. It means looking into the mirror and recognizing that the one who is ruining your life might be the only one trying to save your soul. The greatest burden you carry is the unlived life. Every path you didn't take, every version of yourself you suppressed to remain attached to your current reality is screaming. This scream is the source of that low-level anxiety that never quite leaves you, even in your quietest moments. It is the sound of your potentiality dying in the dark. Total detachment requires you to face the ghosts of these unlived lives. You must realize that by clinging so tightly to your current identity, you are murdering all other possibilities. We think that by being committed, we are being noble, but often commitment is just a fancy word for stagnation. We stay in the same psychological ruts because we are afraid of the vast, empty space that lies beyond our attachments. The unlived life does not want your pity. It wants your energy. It wants you to stop pouring your life force into the maintenance of a certainty that is actually a tomb. The transition to detachment is the moment you stop trying to silence the scream and finally start listening to what it is demanding of you. A total dissolution of the familiar. To enter the state of total detachment, you must be willing to commit the great betrayal. You must betray the expectations of your family, your peers, and your society. This is not an act of malice, but an act of psychic necessity. The social self is a construct built on a series of implicit agreements. I will pretend to be who you want me to be if you will do the same for me. When you break this agreement, you will be met with intense resistance. The people around you do not want you to be free. They want you to be reliable. They want you to stay attached to the shared delusion because your detachment makes their own attachments look like the chains they are. Choosing loneliness over falsity is the first true step toward mastering your energy. When you stop providing the energy of agreement, the social structures around you will begin to wobble. You will be accused of being distant, cold, or not yourself. In reality, you are finally becoming yourself. This loneliness is not a void to be fled. It is a laboratory. In the silence of the social vacuum, you finally begin to hear the frequency of your own soul, undistorted by the noise of the collective. It is a brutal process. It feels like a death because it is a death. The social self must die for the individual to be born. Most men would rather die than have their reputation ruined. They are attached to the name they have built in the world. But from a Jungian standpoint, your reputation is just a collection of other people's projections. It has nothing to do with you. To be detached is to watch your reputation burn and feel nothing but the warmth of the fire. When you no longer care how you were described in the stories of others, you reclaim a massive amount of psychic energy. Think of the hours spent rehearsing conversations, the mental effort of damage control, the constant pruning of your public image. All of that is wasted fuel. When you allow the persona to turn to ash, you are left with the prima materia, the raw, unformed substance of the psyche. This is where real power lies, not in the polished image, but in the indestructible core that remains when the image is gone. The ash of your reputation is the fertilizer for your future. It is only when you have nothing left to protect that you are finally dangerous to the status quo and useful to the self. We are terrified of the void. We fill every silence with noise, every empty room with objects, and every spare moment with content. We do this because the void is the place where our attachments go to die. But in the practice of total detachment, the void is not an enemy. It is a sanctuary. Entering the negative space means learning to exist without the constant input of the world. It is a form of sensory deprivation for the ego. When you stop reaching out, you are forced to look in. You discover that the void is not empty. It is full of the very energy you have been seeking. It is the source code of the psyche. By detaching from the positive space, the world of forms, actions, and reactions, you begin to inhabit the negative space, the world of potential, silence, and being. This is where the mastery of energy truly happens. You learn to hold your energy within yourself rather than throwing it at the world. You become like a black hole, silent, invisible, yet possessing a gravitational force that can warp the very fabric of reality. This is the ominous peace of the sage, a peace that is not based on the absence of conflict, but on the total indifference to it.
Emotional indifference is often misunderstood as callousness. In reality, it is a sophisticated form of psychic geometry. It is the ability to place oneself at a distance where the emotional waves of the world no longer have the amplitude to disturb your center. You see the pain, you see the joy, you see the chaos, but you no longer own it. This is the black sun of the psyche. Just as the sun provides light, but can also blind and burn, detachment provides clarity, but can feel cold to those still clinging to the warmth of the collective. You begin to see the world as a series of patterns, rather than a series of personal affronts. If someone insults you, it is merely a data point about their own internal state. If you lose your wealth, it is merely a shift in the distribution of matter. This indifference is the ultimate shield. It is not built of iron, but of space. There is nothing for the world to hook into. Your energy remains coiled at the base of your being, ready to be used for your own purposes, rather than being scattered by the winds of circumstance. You are no longer a participant in the drama. You are the observer of the geometry. This state allows for a level of precision in action that is impossible for the attached man. Because you do not care about the outcome, you are free to do exactly what is necessary. Most of what we perceive as the world is actually a giant cinema screen upon which we project our own internal archetypes. We see our hero in a politician, our shadow in an enemy, and our anima in a lover. We are attached to these people, not for who they are, but for the parts of ourselves they are carrying for us. Total detachment requires the radical withdrawal of these projections. You must take back your hero, your shadow, and your lover. You must realize that the divine or evil qualities you see in others are actually shards of your own soul that you are too afraid to hold. This withdrawal is painful. It makes the world look gray and dull for a time. The magic seems to go out of things. But this is the only way to become whole. When you reclaim your projections, you reclaim your power. You no longer need the world to act out your internal dramas. You become a closed system, a self-contained universe. The energy that was previously out there, animating the figures in your life, returns to you. You are no longer looking for yourself in the mirror of the world. You have found yourself in the darkness of your own depths. The end result of total detachment is absolute autonomy. This is the sovereign terror. It is the realization that you are the sole creator and the sole destroyer of your experience. There is no one to blame, no one to save you, and no one to give your life meaning but yourself. Most people flee back to attachment at this stage. The weight of sovereignty is too much for the average ego. They would rather be a slave in a familiar world than a king in an empty one. But for the few who can endure the coldness of the black sun, a new kind of energy emerges. It is an energy that does not depend on external validation, physical health, or social standing. It is the lapis, the philosopher's stone, an indestructible center of gravity. You have mastered your energy because you have realized that you are energy. The attachments were just leaks in the pipe. Now, the pipe is sealed. You are a sovereign entity, moving through the world, but not of it. You have reached the point of no return. The world can no longer touch you, but you, for the first time, can truly touch the world. Not as a beggar seeking a crumb, but as a god offering a spark. In the final stage of detachment, even the self you have been cultivating begins to dissolve. You reach a state of no self, where there is no longer a distinction between the observer and the observed. You are no longer a person with a history or a future. You are a localized expression of the collective unconscious, the temporary vortex in the sea of energy. This is the ultimate mastery. When there is no self to defend, there is no possibility of conflict. You move through the world with the grace of a ghost. The world's attempts to influence you pass through you like light through a vacuum. You are beyond the reach of the world's rewards and punishments. This is not a state of catatonia. It is a state of hyper-presence. Because you are not attached to any one perspective, you can inhabit all perspectives. You have become the man of the crossroads, the one who stands between the worlds. Your energy is no longer a resource to be managed. It is a flow to be directed. You have transcended the crisis by becoming the very thing the crisis was trying to forge. The journey ends where it began, but the traveler is unrecognizable. You return to the cave of the world, to your job, your family, your physical body, but you are no longer in it in the same way. You carry the fire of detachment with you. You appear to be the same, but you are a hollow bone. You perform your duties, you engage in relationships, you play the social games, but you do it with the playful indifference of an actor on a stage. You are no longer at stake in your own life. This is the final secret of mastering your energy. It is only when you are willing to lose everything that you are finally